Vince here with this month's President Challenge. And the President's Challenge this month is inside-out turning. So what exactly is an inside-out turning? If you're not familiar with them, the whole idea is you take several pieces, usually four, you bundle them together, hold them together in a bundle using tie wraps or maybe hose clamps. There's several different methods. And you mount it on the lathe, and what you're actually doing on the first time around is you're turning the inside of the work first. And then you unbundle it, swap all the pieces around, glue it together, remount it, and then now you can turn the outside of the form. And I've done some inside-out turnings before. In this case, I did a little hourglass. It's encapsulated inside the form. So basically all these four pieces were at one point swapped around and bundled together using some hose clamps. I turned that cove on the inside, took it apart, swapped all the parts around, stuck the hourglass in there, glued it together, and then I remounted it and turned the outside of the form. So it's a pretty cool thing to do. And in fact, it's simply actually a form of therming, which we did last time for last President's Challenge, making those candlesticks. The difference, and in fact, you could make an inside-out turning using a therming jig. But more often than not, the four pieces or however many pieces are just put into a bundle and mounted on a lathe that way. It's about the same thing. The other difference between therming and inside-out turning is usually therming, the goal of therming is to simply make several identical pieces, whereas the whole goal in inside-out turning is to have several identical pieces that you can glue back together into a symmetric piece of work. Now I've done, as you can see, I've done some inside-out turning before, and usually you'll see some kind of enclosed inside-out turning. And because I had done that before, I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I looked around on the internet to see if there's any other turners doing anything a little bit different, and what I found was there was a few turners doing inside-out turnings but leaving it as an open form, which is kind of cool. This one kind of looks like a flower. So that's what I did for this month's President Challenge. So the first thing I'm going to need is a suitable piece of wood. So I've looked around for some square stock that I had around, and I found this piece, which is about a little under 16 inches long. I was hoping to get a piece that's 4 inches, but this will do. I'll cut this into my 4 blanks once I've got it squared up. And the other thing that I was looking for is if I look at the end of the stock and I look at the grain, the growth rings, I want something where the growth rings are going diagonally through the square, and we'll see why that is later on. Now I'm going to need, before I cut this blank into 4, I need to make sure that everything is a perfect square. So first I'll head over to the jointer and I'll joint 2 sides, so that I'll have at least one right angle. Then I'll use those 2 surfaces over at the planer, and that way I can at the same time make sure those are 90 degrees and that this is the same diameter, so I have a perfect square. So these are my 2 jointed faces, right here and right here. And if we take a look, it's nice and square. The other tip you can do, if you have a memory that's bad like mine, is I always mark a little J on the 2 sides. Sometimes you can tell if it's an older piece of wood because it looks newer, but I always mark the 2 sides that I jointed, because by the time I get to the planer, I'll forget. So a quick check with the dial calipers, and I've got the same diameter across each section, and I'm nice and square on all 4 corners, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm ready to go over to the miter saw and chop this into 4 equal pieces. Now I've done a little bit of math on my stock here, measured the whole thing, and taking into account the fact that I'm probably going to want to trim a little bit off the ends, I figure I can get an easily 3 3/4 inch pieces out of this. So I set up stop block at 3 3/4 inches. Now a tip, if you set up stop blocks like this, a tip that I always do is I always set them up on top of some kind of card or maybe a piece of high pressure laminate, whatever I have, so that when I pull this out, I have just a tiny gap on the bottom. If I was to set up this stop block flush on the bottom of the surface here, if I was to get a little bit of dust from one cut, I might not notice and put my piece up for the next cut, and I might throw off my cut. So what that little gap at the bottom does, it's a dust relief. So if I get a little sawdust in here, it just gets pushed underneath the stop block. Now I'm just about ready to bundle these up so I can turn the inside of my form, but this is the opportunity, this is the time to take the opportunity to play with the grain a little bit. And here's this, you'll see why I chose grain that's running diagonally through the work. Now if you look at a normal spindle and you look at the growth rings on the end, when I have these growth rings horizontal like that and I look at this surface, you'll see that cathedral style grain, sometimes it's referred to as flat sawn grain, but I'm referring to these chevrons in the work. Now if you were to look at the turn, so the end grain, so that at the end grain you saw the growth rings growing vertically, and you look at the surface, now you've got this long straight grain. And when you're doing spindle work on a solid piece like that, that's always going to happen. But since we're gluing several pieces, 4 pieces together, we have a chance to manipulate that. Now, if I were to have it in this configuration with the grain running almost in a diamond shape like this, what I'm going to get on both this surface and this surface, the inside and the outside of my form, is I'm going to get this cathedral style grain on all 4 surfaces. Now if I swap them and have the grain going from center outward, now all sides of my form on the inside and the outside are going to be this long grain. So we get to play with that. Which one's better? It's really up to you. It might be just a personal preference. It might be that given what you're working on, you might want one or the other. Actually, I tend to like side grain, the long grain, that long grain mostly. So I'm going to arrange mine this way with the growth rings going from the center out to the corners. Now in doing enclosed types of inside-out turnings, usually what you'll do is you'll bundle this up with some tie wraps or some maybe some hose clamps or something. But since this is relatively short, and since I'm doing an open-ended inside-out turning, I found that if I can get this into the chuck, I can clamp down on that and I'll actually hold it quite well. It turns out this approach wasn't a very good idea after all, because although I got lucky with it the first time, this second time around I didn't get so lucky, as we'll see in just a moment. So I've got the tape on here, that's just to hold it together temporarily while I get into the chuck. And now I've noticed that these aren't exactly perfectly square. If you find that, I wouldn't sweat it too much. We're going to lap this before we glue it, but as long as it's enough to be to keep it together. I'll give this one more twist to make sure it's nice and tight. And surprisingly, those aren't going anywhere. And the other thing I want to check, I want to see, make sure that that is pretty close to the center. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that's more than adequate. And we're ready to turn. Now we're actually turning the inside, so basically on this surface here is what I'm going to be turning this first. Now this last time I created an oji for the inside, and that gave me these tips turning outwards. This time I'm going to try to make the tips turn inwards. So I'm just going to make a cove right here. And just to be different, I've been using my 1/2-inch spindle gouge a lot, so I'm going to use my 3/8 for this, just to do something different. The grind on this gouge is a little bit different. It's the same. It's about a 45-degree bevel. It's heavily relieved so I can get inside on inside curves, and I sweep back both wings. A lot of times I only sweep back the one wing because I'm doing face work, but when I'm doing cove work, detail work, I find it helps just to sweep them both back. And I'm not gonna rough it out because I'm gonna need those flat spots to glue together. So I will cut a little air and start making my cove. Well, it seems like just putting those pieces in the chuck alone, without any other strapping, wasn't a good idea after all, because it pretty much came apart on the lathe, got a real good smack on the cheek, and it took me about a half an hour to find all the pieces. But I think I can salvage it still. I've got this temporary strap on here just to hold together while I can do something here to get a hose clamp installed on there. So the first thing I need to do, more slowly, not too much speed, is I need to put a little bit of a tenon right here. And we'll see if that's wide enough for my hose clamp. I need about another 1/16 of an inch there. And we can put on, got some tear out there, but we'll clean that up. And I'll get my hose clamp on this side. Now what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're putting the hose clamp on this way, not the other way around, because this is going to be coming towards me and I don't want to get stabbed by that little bit. We'll put tape on it too, but in case the tape ever came off, we don't want to be getting poked head on with that extra strap right there. So all this extra 3/8 or so, ½ inch at the end now, is going to become waste. So my final product will be a little smaller. Too much. Make sure that band, this hose clamp's on there nice and even, and we'll tighten it down. Probably doesn't have to be super tight because it's not going anywhere, but I want it snug. And then what I'll do is use some duct tape. I'll split it up. It doesn't need to be this wide. I don't like the idea of getting stabbed with that, so I like to use plenty of tape. Alright, that should be a little better. And I don't need this strap here anymore. That can go away. That was only temporary. And we're back in business. It's a little bit oblong, so we're going to have to clean it up. Now the cool thing about doing inside-out turnings, one of the cool things, is that I can go ahead and sand and finish the inside now before I take it apart. Now I'm not going to be putting any finish on this because this is strictly exploratory, but I'm going to sand it a little bit since it's easy enough to do. Just refine my surface a little bit. Let me get a fresh, something a little coarser here. Just got to watch your fingers. You don't want to be, actually it's not that bad. A lot of times when I'm just doing exploratory stuff, I'll just use beeswax, but I know it's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to spin this up and put friction on it, so I think, just to see what it's going to look like. And usually in these spots right here, you end up doing a little hand sanding. Alright, so now we can take it apart, switch everything around and glue it up and bring it back for the outside. So here's where the magic comes with inside out turning. Now that I've got these apart, I'm going to glue them back together, but I'm going to rearrange these 180 degrees, and that's how I'm going to glue it back together. So now you can see the inside is actually already finished. Now when I glue these back together, I don't want to glue all four of them at once because my surfaces may not be perfectly perpendicular. So I'm going to do them in pairs first, and then I'm going to lap the surface here to make sure that's flat, and then I can put the two halves together. That way I'm sure I have a good glue surface contact everywhere. Now the other thing is when I go to glue these together, I have to keep in mind to keep both of them even, both the surface flush, and also try to align it this way. It can get a little bit confusing when you're doing that. So what I like to do is I like to put them face down and register against this flat surface. That way I don't have to worry about the bottom, those surfaces being flush. I can just press down on them and then focus on getting this corner right here aligned. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to use cyanoacrylate glue, CA glue, for this because it's a turning, it's only decorative. But if you were using this, we'll see later, there's some ideas I have that you could use shapes like this for furniture parts, and you'd probably want to use yellow glue for that. And the other thing I want to do is I've got this surface finished already, so I don't want to get any glue squeezing out on this edge. So I'm going to try to keep the glue away from that edge. So, whoops, a little bit too much. If I get squeezed out anywhere else, it's just going to go away, so I'm not going to worry about that. I just want to keep it away from my finished inside edge. So I got them flat down, press them together, and squeeze. And CA glue, I can just hold it there for a minute. Now it doesn't matter if this top surface doesn't feel even, I wouldn't worry about it. It's only the bottom one because we want to minimize the amount that we're going to have to lap it later on. So there's one. It's not quite set, but I'll just set it aside here to dry, and we'll do the other one. And I've also decided just to give it a little clamping pressure, just to make sure. And I'll give that a few minutes to dry. This particular brand of CA glue doesn't dry really fast without activator, and sometimes that's nice to have the extra working time. Alright, those have been in long enough. Before I glue these together, you can see they're a little bit off, so I need to flatten these a little bit. I could take it to the jointer, but I think that's going to take off too much material. So usually what I do is I just lap it on a flat surface with a piece of sandpaper. Now the key to lapping something like this successfully is you don't want to start rubbing back and forth, because what you tend to do is you tend to rock it and you'll forever have a bowed surface. So the idea, I'll mark it to see my progress, is you want to register it nicely and then slide across. And you can see just a few swipes with 180 grit sandpaper, and I've just got a tiny bit left right there. Alright, so I'm ready to do my final glue up. Now this time, I'm not worried about keeping two surfaces flush. This is my last glue surface, so I just want to make sure they're aligned nicely. So my glue, what do I do with my glue? And once again, I want to stay away from this edge because I don't want to get glue squeezing out on my finished inside. I'll hold it just long enough till it stops trying to sliding around. A little bit of tack there, and a little clamping pressure. And we'll give that about 10 minutes for that CA glue to set. Alright, so my blank has dried. I'm going to mount it back in to the chuck. Hopefully we'll have no more explosions since it's glued together now. Clamp that down nicely. So at the end, it's going to get pretty delicate at the end at some point here. So I want to start working about this half of the work first. Now, the bunch of material to move here. Well, I managed to struggle through that. Another president's challenge, not without its difficulties. I didn't sand the piece too much. I threw some oil on it just to see what it looks like. I wasn't worried about finishing it too much because this is really just an experiment, kind of exploratory. Now, I had some neat ideas. There's a lot of potential for this kind of open-ended inside-out turning. For instance, if you want to do something strictly decorative, you could make a spindle, a thin spindle in another species, and you could turn them into a flower or wooden flower arrangement. That's kind of a cool idea. If you're a furniture maker, I was thinking you could put this on a bedpost, any kind of spindle in furniture, especially something like a pencil post bed at the top, where it's up out of the way and won't get damaged. That'd be kind of a cool ornamental thing you could do on the top of any kind of post. As well, you could make this really, really small version of this, put it on a lid, and it could be the pull on a lidded box. Kind of a different style of pull. And as well, I was thinking you don't necessarily have to keep it up this way. You can turn it upside down, and now it becomes the base of something. Probably not furniture, probably not strong enough for furniture, but imagine this as the base of a candlestick or maybe a cake plate or something like that. That's kind of a cool idea. That's all I have for this time. Besides, I got a meeting to get to. I'm already running late. So until next time, I'm Brian Havens, and thanks for watching.